Sam and Dan were brothers, but they weren't like most brothers. You see, Sam was much younger than Dan. Despite their age difference, they started school together. It was a rather unusual situation.
I thought it would be easier to have you both at the same school, even if you're in different grades.
Sam wasn't quite sure what to make of it all. He loved his older brother dearly, but the thought of being in the same school, at the same time, was a little overwhelming.
I don't know, Dan, this feels kind of scary.
Dan, on the other hand, seemed completely unfazed. He was a head taller than Sam and carried himself with an air of confidence that Sam envied.
Don't worry, Sam, it'll be fun, you'll see.
The first day of school arrived, bringing with it a mix of excitement and nerves. Sam clung to his mother's hand, his eyes wide with apprehension.
Mom, do I really have to go?
Dan, meanwhile, bounced around like an eager puppy, ready for the day's adventures. He greeted his friends with boisterous hellos, completely at ease in the schoolyard.
Hey guys, ready for another awesome year?
As the school bell rang, signaling the start of the day, Sam felt a pang of anxiety. He watched as Dan disappeared into a classroom with the other older children. Suddenly, Sam felt very small and very alone.
Come along, Sam. Let's find you a seat. You'll be just fine.
His teacher, a kind-faced woman named Mrs. Honey, gently ushered him into her classroom, her warm smile putting him somewhat at ease. Sam's classroom was a bright and cheerful place, filled with colorful drawings and the sounds of children's laughter. They spent their days learning the alphabet, counting on their fingers and listening to fairy tales. Sam, despite his initial anxiety, found himself enjoying the simple pleasures of learning.
Miss Honey, can you read us another story?
Dan's classroom, however, was a different world altogether. His lessons seemed much harder, filled with complicated words and even more complicated numbers.
Ugh, this math is tough.
Sam would often peek into Dan's bag and marvel at the textbooks, their pages dense with information that made his head spin. It was clear that being in a higher grade came with its own set of challenges.
Wow, Dan, how do you understand all this stuff? You get used to it, Sam. Just takes time.
And so, the two brothers navigated their own paths side by side, but in very different worlds. One evening, as Sam was happily coloring in his drawing book, he noticed Dan hunched over his desk, a look of frustration etched on his face. His books were spread out like a battlefield, and he was wrestling with a particularly difficult math problem. Dan was never one to ask for help, but Sam could see that he was struggling.
Hey, Dan, what's wrong? It's this stupid math problem. I just can't get it right.
Sam, curious, sidled up to his brother and peered at the problem. To his surprise, it looked strangely familiar. He had just learned something similar in his own class, albeit a much simpler version. An idea began to form in Sam's mind, a daring and somewhat mischievous idea.
Maybe I can help.
That night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Sam crept back into the living room. He found Dan's notebook and, with a mischievous grin, picked up a pencil. He carefully solved the math problem, his hand moving with a confidence he hadn't realized he possessed. It felt exhilarating, like cracking a secret code.
Wow, this is kind of fun.
Over the next few days, Sam continued to secretly do Dan's homework. He found himself relishing the challenge, his mind eagerly absorbing the more advanced material. It was as if a hidden door had opened within him, revealing a thirst for knowledge he never knew he had.
I can't believe how much I'm learning.
As the days turned into weeks, Sam's confidence grew. He aced his own schoolwork, finding it almost too easy. The realization hit him that he was meant for something more. He wanted to be challenged, to be in a classroom that stimulated his mind. He wanted to skip a grade.
I need to talk to Mom and Dad about this.
He approached his parents with his proposition. To his dismay, they met his request with amusement.
You're too young, sweetheart.
His mother chuckled, patting his head. His father, while more understanding, agreed that it simply wasn't possible.
But I know I can do it.
Sam, however, refused to give up. He was determined to prove everyone wrong.